Hey, future civil servants. Ready for another deep dive to help you stay on top of things for your UPSC exams?
Always.
Great. You know how landmark Supreme Court judgments have a way of popping up in both prelims and mains?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, get this. The Supreme Court just made a huge decision about domicile-based reservations, and you'll want to take notes.
Big one for sure.
So we're talking about those reservations for postgraduate medical admissions.
Huge.
The court just declared them unconstitutional.
It's fascinating, really. The court's reasoning goes right back to something you're already familiar with, Article 14, the right to equality.
Okay, so quick refresher for anyone who needs it. Domicile-based reservations basically mean that states can hold back a certain percentage of PG medical seats,
Right.
specifically for students who have domicile in that state.
Yep.
And of course, it gets a little tricky because the central government and the states each control 50% of those seats.
Exactly. And that's what makes this judgment so impactful. It really throws a wrench into the strategies some states have been using. Well, the court emphasized that Article 14 guarantees all Indian citizens the right to live and work anywhere in the country.
So no matter where you're from, you have the right to pursue your medical career in any state.
That's the idea.
So how does all of this fit into the bigger picture of, say, federalism in India?
That's a great question. You see, India has always had this balancing act between the powers of the central government and those of the individual states.
Right.
And this ruling, well, it could shift that balance.
You mean it could potentially limit how much control states have over something as crucial as medical education?
Potentially, yes. And for those of you prepping for mains, this case is pure gold.
Oh, I can see that.
Think about it. An essay question on how federalism is evolving in India, or the challenges of making sure everyone has fair access to higher education.
This judgment gives you so much to analyze.
Absolutely.
It's definitely giving me some ideas. But there's a little bit of a historical twist here that I think is important to understand.
Go on.
Remember the 1984 Dr. Pradeep Jain case? Well, that case allowed residence-based reservations for MBBS.
Yes.
So why the difference for PG admissions?
You've hit on a really important point. The court actually made a clear distinction there.
How so?
Well, in 1984, the court took into account all the money states invest in building and running those medical colleges.
So it made sense to give priority to local students for MBBS since state funding was involved.
Exactly. But the court said that same logic doesn't really apply to postgraduate courses.
So they're basically saying that specializing in something like cardiology needs to be assessed differently.
Right.
It should be more about merit and nationwide competition instead of just local considerations.
You got it. And they actually went a step further, stating that domicile of India is the only legally valid domicile,
Wow.
according to Article 5 of the Constitution.
So the court is saying that state-specific domiciles don't really hold up in our legal system.
That's their stance.
That's a pretty big statement. And it could have a ripple effect on other policies that depend on state-specific domicile.
Definitely something to watch.
Okay, so we've established that the court struck down those domicile-based reservations for PG medical admissions. But let's break down the arguments for and against these reservations in the first place. Why did states even want these quotas?
Well, the people who supported these reservations argued that they helped make sure local students, especially in states with fewer medical colleges, had a fair shot.
It makes sense. They saw it as a way to boost local development, address any historical imbalances, and empower communities.
Precisely.
So it sounds like a way to invest in local talent and make sure those regions don't fall behind when it comes to healthcare expertise.
Right.
But I imagine there's another side to this coin. What were the arguments against these reservations?
Critics were worried that these reservations could actually go against fundamental rights, especially the right to equality and the freedom to practice medicine anywhere in India.
So they were worried about potential discrimination against those who weren't from a particular state.
Exactly. And they also raised concerns about fragmenting the healthcare system, leading to economic inefficiencies, and even hindering national integration.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? Balancing the needs of different regions with the overall priorities of the nation.
Absolutely. And it's also about balancing individual rights with broader social goals.
It's exactly the kind of complex issue that the UPSC loves to test you on.
It's a goldmine for analysis.
All right, so let's bring it back to our listeners. If you're prepping for the UPSC, here's why this case is so important.
Okay, go for it.
First, it tests how well you understand those fundamental rights.
Especially Article 14 and how it's interpreted in the context of reservations.
Second, it highlights that tension between the power of the states and the power of the central government.
Adding another layer to how you understand Indian federalism.
And third, it raises some serious questions about social justice, economic development, and how the government balances those competing demands.
It's like a crash course in all those key UPSC themes.
All packed into one single judgment. Now, before we dive into the broader impact of this ruling,
And believe me, there's a lot to unpack there.
we'll pause here for now. Make sure you catch part 2, where we'll explore how this decision could create a domino effect and look at some alternative solutions to those regional disparities in healthcare.
And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
We always love hearing your perspectives.
Until next time, happy studying.
And remember, the source for this episode is TH.
Always got to cite those sources. Welcome back, UPSC aspirants. Let's pick up where we left off and really dig into those potential ripple effects of this Supreme Court judgment.
You mentioned that this ruling could impact more than just medical school admissions.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. Think about it. State government jobs, admissions to other professional courses, even property rights.
Wow.
Anything where states have used that state-specific domicile as a requirement could face legal challenges now.
So this ruling could really reshape opportunities across all sorts of sectors in India. That's massive. But let's get back to those reservations for a sec. Article 15 and 16 of the Constitution, they allow for reservations for backward classes.
Right.
But they don't explicitly mention domicile. So how did some states justify giving priority to local students using that framework?
It all boils down to interpretation. Some states basically argued that local residents, especially in certain areas, faced social and economic disadvantages.
So they were saying that justified including those residents under the category of backward classes.
Exactly. They kind of stretched the definition to include domicile as a factor.
Clever. But it sounds like the Supreme Court is pushing back against that interpretation.
Yeah, at least when it comes to PG medical admissions. The court's emphasis on merit and nationwide competition suggests that where you're from can't be the only reason for granting reservations.
Especially for those specialized fields that need advanced training. Okay, so we've talked about the legal and political side of things, but let's not forget about the human element. We're talking about aspiring doctors, their hopes and dreams.
Absolutely.
This ruling must be causing a lot of anxiety for them.
For sure, students who are depending on those domicile-based reservations, they might be facing tougher competition now for those PG seats.
It really highlights the need for a fairer system, doesn't it? One that levels the playing field when it comes to medical education across India.
Couldn't agree more. We need a system where talented people from every corner of India have a real chance to pursue specialized medical training.
Regardless of where they're from or their background.
Exactly. That's the ideal scenario.
It's a powerful vision.
Yeah.
And it really lines up with what the UPSC emphasizes, meritocracy and national integration.
For sure.
Now let's go back to that 1984 Dr. Pradeep Jain case for a minute. Remember, that one allowed residence-based reservations for MBBS. This recent ruling makes a clear distinction between MBBS and PG programs.
Yeah.
Can you explain why the court doesn't think the logic for MBBS reservations applies to postgraduate studies?
Sure. The court recognized how much states invest in MBBS programs.
Right.
So prioritizing local students at that stage made sense. It was seen as a way to ensure a return on that investment.
And to address local healthcare needs.
Exactly. But they argued that PG admissions require a different perspective. They said specialization needs a national-level selection process.
Based solely on merit.
Right, determined by the NEET PG exam.
So when it comes to training specialists who will be contributing to medical advancements across the entire nation, the focus should be on excellence and standardized qualifications.
Absolutely. It's about making sure the most qualified individuals get the chance to pursue advanced training no matter where they're from.
It benefits the medical profession as a whole and the nation. It's like building a stronger, more unified healthcare system by nurturing talent from all over India. This judgment really throws light on the complexities of balancing social justice, regional needs, and national-level goals.
It does, and it's the kind of nuanced issue that often comes up in UPSC exams.
Absolutely. A perfect example of how a single legal decision can spark debate and challenge our understanding of equality, opportunity, and meritocracy.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And we know our listeners are already thinking about how this ruling could be analyzed in a UPSC mains answer.
I bet they are.
But before we jump into potential essay questions, let's consider the human side of this once more.
Of course. This judgment will have real-world consequences for these aspiring
But
doctors.
we're talking about real people with their own hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
This will undoubtedly affect their paths.
It highlights the need for empathy and understanding qualities that are just as important for future civil servants as knowing the ins and outs of law and policy.
All right, so we've looked at the legal arguments, explored those potential domino effects, and acknowledged the human side of this judgment. But the biggest question remains, if not domicile-based reservations, then what?
Right. What are the alternatives?
What other solutions can address those regional disparities in healthcare access and medical education?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's exactly what we'll be unpacking in the final part of our deep dive.
Stay with us, UPSC aspirants. We'll be back with some potential solutions that could really shape the future of healthcare in India. And don't forget to hit that like button.
And subscribe to our channel for more in-depth discussions like this one.
We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts, so share them in the comments.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing. And remember, the source for this episode is TH. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive, everybody. We're talking about that big Supreme Court decision on domicile-based reservations for those PG medical admissions.
That's right.
We've covered a lot, haven't we?
We have the legal arguments, those ripple effects, the human impact.
Now it's time to get creative. Think problem solving.
Exactly. Let's explore some alternative solutions to those regional disparities in healthcare access and medical education. You know, the ones those domicile-based quotas we're trying to fix.
Right. We need to create a more equitable and robust healthcare system for all of India.
Couldn't agree more.
So let's brainstorm, keeping in mind, of course, that UPSC focus on finding solutions that actually work. What do you think? Where do we start?
Well, how about this? Instead of fixating on where someone's from, let's focus on creating opportunities where they're needed most.
I like that.
Think about it, a major investment in upgrading those medical colleges and hospitals, especially in those underserved regions.
It's about leveling the playing field, right?
Yeah.
Boosting capacity instead of restricting access.
Exactly. And on top of that, imagine targeted scholarships and financial assistance for students from disadvantaged backgrounds.
No matter where they're from.
Exactly. We could have nationwide programs that find those promising students who are struggling financially and support them all the way to becoming specialized doctors.
Now that's an idea I can get behind. Breaks down those economic barriers and lets those bright minds reach their full potential.
Right.
Plus, it aligns perfectly with the UPSC's emphasis on social justice. It's not just about money, it's about merit and potential.
Absolutely. And here's another thought. We could incentivize doctors to actually practice in those rural and remote areas.
Okay.
Think loan forgiveness programs, housing subsidies, even special bonuses for doctors who choose to serve those communities.
So instead of forcing them through quotas, we make it more appealing for them to choose those areas.
Exactly. It's more sustainable that way, don't you think?
Makes sense. And what about establishing more medical colleges in those underrepresented areas?
Now you're talking. Increasing the number of PG seats would take the pressure off those existing institutions.
And maybe we wouldn't even feel the need for those domicile-based quotas as much.
Exactly. We're expanding the pie instead of just arguing over the slices.
More inclusive and forward-thinking for sure. I can already see myself writing a managing answer about this. Analyzing the limitations of those domicile-based reservations and proposing a whole strategy focused on infrastructure development, targeted financial aid incentives for rural service.
Classic UPSC. Identifying the problem, evaluating the existing solutions, and coming up with innovative alternatives that actually address the root causes.
The essence of effective policymaking right there.
Couldn't agree more. It's about thinking outside the box, challenging those assumptions, and coming up with solutions that make a difference.
So as you continue your UPSC journey, remember, this Supreme Court judgment is more than just a legal case.
It really reflects those complex challenges India faces, balancing all those competing demands.
And it's a reminder to us all that we need to think creatively and find solutions that uphold those key principles: equality, meritocracy, and national unity.
Well said.
Now it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these alternative solutions? Any other ideas for creating a healthcare system that works for everyone in India?
Head over to the comments and let us know. We love hearing from you and getting those discussions going.
And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into current affairs, and share this episode with your fellow aspirants.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those brains buzzing.
And remember, the source for this episode is TH.